This is Mr. Eugene, and today we're addressing something people fundamentally misunderstand about this channel's message. Some people assume I'm targeting women or trying to paint them as villains in the relationship story. That's not what's happening here. What I'm doing is identifying patterns that systematically destroy families. And when you examine relationship dysfunction honestly, when you look at marriages that fail, at homes that transform into war zones, at families that collapse under the weight of unresolved conflict, there's a pattern you cannot ignore. Women initiate most of the conflict, women resist most of the accountability, and women blame men for problems they systematically created. That's not opinion, that's not bias. That's observable reality backed by divorce statistics, therapy outcomes, and the lived experience of millions of men who can't say this publicly without being attacked. And pointing out this reality doesn't make me anti-woman. It makes me pro-family. Because families cannot function, cannot thrive, cannot survive long-term when one person operates with complete immunity from accountability. Let me establish something before we go further. I don't hate women. That accusation gets thrown around constantly, usually by people who can't refute the actual argument, so they attack the messenger instead. Hating women would be pointless and counterproductive. What I oppose, what I will continue to oppose, is the specific patterns of behavior that destroy marriages, damage children, and leave good men emotionally destroyed while being told they're the problem. There's a massive difference between criticizing women as a group and criticizing specific toxic behaviors that some women engage in. If I said all women are terrible, that would be misogyny. What I'm actually saying is these specific behaviors that many women engage in are destroying families, and we need to address them. That's not hatred. That's pattern recognition. That's advocacy for the families being destroyed by these patterns. Everyone who's honest understands women struggle with accountability. You see it everywhere. In the comments under videos like this, women flood in asking, what about the men? Why don't you talk about what men do wrong? Why are you only focusing on women? Here's the answer, and I want you to really hear this. Men have their issues. Absolutely. Men can be lazy, conflict avoidant, porn addicted, emotionally unavailable, financially irresponsible. Those are real problems that real men struggle with. I'm not denying any of that. But here's what changes the equation entirely. Most of those male problems dramatically improve or disappear completely when the wife is reasonable, supportive, and sexually available. A man with a peaceful home, a respectful wife who actually likes him, and consistent intimacy doesn't create problems. He solves them. He builds. He leads. He protects. He becomes the man she claims she wants him to be. You give a man peace at home, and he'll conquer the world outside of it. You give him respect, and he'll move mountains to deserve it. You give him consistent intimacy, and his motivation to provide and protect multiplies exponentially. This isn't theory. This is how male psychology operates at a fundamental level. But a man living with constant criticism, sexual rejection, and a wife who refuses accountability for anything, that man becomes a shell of what he could be. Not because he's inherently weak, but because his home, the place that should be his refuge, has become a battlefield. And his wife, the person who should be his greatest supporter, is the one firing shots at him daily. So until women get their side handled, until they address their contribution to relationship dysfunction, focusing on men's issues is just deflection. It's another tactical maneuver to avoid looking in the mirror and accepting uncomfortable truths about their own behavior. I know exactly why some women believe men cause all relationship problems, because that's what they've been systematically taught. Society has programmed them to see men as the problem and themselves as perpetual victims who bear no responsibility for any negative outcome. Women are wonderful effect. Look it up. It's a documented psychological bias where both men and women automatically assume women are better, more moral, more trustworthy than men. This programming starts early. Little girls are taught they're sugar and spice and everything nice, while boys are snips and snails and puppy dog tails. This continues through education where boys are punished more harshly for the same behaviors, where male energy is pathologized as toxic, where masculinity itself is treated as something that needs to be corrected rather than channeled. By the time women reach adulthood, they've internalized a framework that says, if there's a problem in the relationship, look at what the man is doing wrong. Never look at yourself. Your feelings are always valid. Your perspective is always legitimate. If you're unhappy, it's because he's failing you, not because you might be the problem. This framework is absolutely poisonous to relationships. And here's what actually happens when a woman operates from it. When her husband gets upset, frustrated, or angry, her immediate thought is, he's just being a jerk again. Never. What did I do to cause this man frustration? Never. How many times did I dismiss him, ignore him, interrupt him, talk over him, or react defensively before he finally raised his voice? Never. What pattern of disrespect or rejection led to this moment? It's a completely broken way of thinking, and it accomplishes two profoundly destructive things that compound over time until the marriage is unrecognizable. First, it creates a woman who believes her behavior is acceptable when it's actually toxic. She thinks nagging is just effective communication. She thinks withholding intimacy is setting healthy boundaries. She thinks dismissing his concerns is standing up for herself. She thinks criticizing him publicly is just venting to her friends. She thinks spending money they don't have is self-care. She thinks prioritizing everyone and everything above him is just being a good mother. She's not a partner. She's a problem that never gets solved because she refuses to acknowledge she's creating the problem. And because she won't acknowledge it, she can't fix it. So the behavior continues, intensifies, and becomes the normalized pattern of the relationship. Second, it shames and systematically punishes the man for speaking up about issues. Every single time he tries to address a problem with her behavior, she reframes it as him being controlling, insensitive, mean, unsupportive, or attacking her. She makes his legitimate concern about her behavior into a referendum on his character. She trains him through consistent punishment that honesty isn't worth the cost, that bringing up issues leads to days or weeks of hostility, sexual rejection, emotional withdrawal, and being portrayed as the bad guy. So rationally, logically, he stops being honest. He stops addressing issues. He emotionally withdraws and protects himself. And then she wonders why he's distant, why he doesn't share with her anymore, why he seems checked out. She created the exact outcome she claims to hate. But she'll never connect her behavior to his response because that would require accountability, which is the one thing she's systematically avoiding. This pattern creates what I call the label game, and it's probably the most destructive dynamic in modern marriage aside from infidelity. Once you understand how this game works, you'll see it everywhere, in your own marriage, in your friends' marriages, in every relationship around you. Here's the detailed breakdown of how it operates. She does something irrational, irresponsible, financially reckless, disrespectful, or contrary to their shared goals and values. Could be overspending, could be disrespecting him in front of others, could be neglecting agreed-upon responsibilities, could be making major decisions without consulting him. The specific behavior doesn't matter. What matters is it's problematic and needs to be addressed. He brings it to her attention calmly and respectfully, uses I statements, doesn't attack her character, focuses on the specific behavior and its impact. Does everything the marriage counselors say to do. Hey, I noticed the credit card bill is way over budget this month. Can we talk about what happened? She ignores him, doesn't respond, changes the subject, gives a dismissive answer, or says we'll talk about it later and never brings it up again. This is the first test. She's seeing if he'll just let it go. He doesn't let it go because it's actually important. He rephrases it, tries a different approach, maybe brings it up at a different time. I'm serious about needing to discuss the budget. This is affecting our financial goals. Still calm, still respectful, still trying to problem solve like an adult. Still ignored or dismissed. She might add some defensiveness now. Why are you making such a big deal about this? Or you're always trying to control me, or I work too. I can spend money. None of this addresses the actual issue. It's all deflection designed to make him either back off or escalate. He tries one more time, maybe two more times, increasingly frustrated that his wife simply will not engage with a legitimate concern. His tone starts showing that frustration. He might raise his voice slightly. He might use more direct language, not abusive, not attacking, just displaying the natural human response to being repeatedly dismissed by someone who's supposed to be your partner. And there it is. She just won the game in her mind. Because now the entire issue has shifted. The problem is no longer her overspending or whatever the original behavior was. The problem is now that he's a jerk who yelled at her, that he's being mean, that he can't communicate properly, that his tone was harsh, that he's making her feel attacked. She'll spend the next 3 days, sometimes 3 weeks, making him apologize for his tone, for raising his voice, for making her feel bad. She'll tell her friends about how he yelled at her. She'll give him the silent treatment. She'll withhold intimacy. She'll make it clear that his behavior, his reaction to being repeatedly dismissed is unacceptable and he needs to change. Meanwhile, her actual behavior, the overspending or disrespect or irresponsibility that started this entire cycle, never gets addressed, never gets acknowledged, never gets changed. It disappears completely under the avalanche of focus on his tone, his frustration, his supposed character flaw. This isn't conflict resolution. This is sophisticated manipulation. She's using his frustration, which she deliberately created by refusing to engage with a legitimate concern through multiple respectful attempts, as a weapon to avoid accountability entirely. And it works spectacularly, because most men would rather have peace than be right. So they apologize for getting upset, for raising their voice, for their tone, while her actual problematic behavior continues unchanged. Can you see why this pattern systematically destroys marriages? Every single cycle like this teaches the man a devastating lesson. His wife cannot and will not be held accountable for anything. That addressing her behavior isn't just ineffective, it's actively punished. that his role in this marriage isn't partner, it's emotional punching bag who absorbs her dysfunction, accepts her disrespect, and never pushes back because pushing back costs too much. Over years of this pattern, something breaks inside the man. He stops trying to address issues. He stops caring enough to fight. He stops expecting her to be a partner. He becomes the distant, emotionally unavailable, checked-out husband she complains about to her friends. He never talks to me anymore. He's always in the garage or on his phone. He doesn't engage with me. I don't know what happened to him. What happened to him is she systematically trained him that engagement is punished. She destroyed his willingness to be vulnerable with her by weaponizing every vulnerability. She killed his desire to share concerns by making every concern into a multi-day war where he's the villain. And she has absolutely no idea she created the exact man she now resents, because accepting that truth would require the accountability she spent years avoiding. Let me give you some real examples from men I've counseled, because this pattern plays out with depressing consistency across thousands of marriages. Client 1, his wife overspent by $3,000 on a girl's trip they couldn't afford. He tried to discuss it calmly. We agreed on a budget for this trip. What happened? She immediately got defensive. I never get to do anything for myself. You always try to control me. I work hard. I deserve this. He tried again. It's not about deserving it. It's about we literally cannot afford an extra $3,000 right now. We have other obligations. She started crying. Why do you always make me feel guilty? You're so mean to me. The conversation ended with him comforting her for being upset that he brought up her overspending. The $3,000? Never addressed. The pattern continues. Next month, she overspent by $2,000 on redecorating. Same cycle. Eventually, he just stopped checking the credit card statements because dealing with her reaction was worse than just accepting the financial damage. Client 2, his wife consistently disrespected him in front of her family, interrupting him, contradicting him, making jokes at his expense, undermining his decisions with the kids. He asked her privately to stop. When you do that in front of your family, it makes me feel disrespected and undermines my authority with the kids. Her response? You're too sensitive. They don't mean anything by it. Why are you trying to come between me and my family? You're being controlling. He tried addressing it 3 more times over 6 months. Each time, she reframed his legitimate concern about disrespect as him being insecure or controlling or causing problems with her family. Eventually, he stopped going to family events. Now she complains that he doesn't want to spend time with her family, completely disconnected from the fact that she made those events intolerable for him and refused to address it. Client 3, dead bedroom situation, once a month or less. He tried everything. Communicated his needs clearly, asked what he could do to improve the situation, tried romance, tried being more helpful around the house, tried backing off and giving her space. Nothing changed. When he finally said, this is seriously damaging our marriage and we need to address it, she responded with, is that all you ever think about? You're so shallow. There's more to marriage than sex. I'm tired, I'm stressed, I have a lot going on. Stop pressuring me. Notice the pattern. His legitimate need for intimacy got reframed as him being shallow and pressuring her. The actual issue, that she's completely withdrawn intimacy from the marriage, never gets addressed. He's just the bad guy for wanting physical connection with his wife. Eventually, he stopped asking. Now she occasionally complains that he never initiates anymore, completely oblivious to the fact that she trained him to stop through years of rejection and criticism. These aren't isolated cases. This is the standard operating procedure in millions of marriages right now. The wife does something problematic. The husband tries to address it respectfully. She deflects, gets defensive, makes it about his communication style or tone. He either backs off to preserve peace, or he escalates out of frustration, and then she has proof he's the problem. Either way, her behavior never gets addressed and the pattern continues. Now let's talk about why this matters so much. Why I focus on it so intensely. Why this pattern is absolutely catastrophic for families. Men have straightforward needs in relationships. This isn't complicated or mysterious. Peace at home and consistent intimacy. That's the foundation. Everything else builds from there. Give a man those 2 things and 95% of men are gentle, supportive, patient, and easy to live with. They become better fathers, better providers, better leaders in every area of life. Here's why this works. When a man has peace at home, his stress levels drop dramatically. His home becomes the refuge it's supposed to be instead of another battlefield. He can decompress, recharge, and face the world's challenges from a position of strength. His capacity to handle stress at work increases. His patience with life's difficulties expands. His decision-making improves because he's not operating from a place of constant stress. When a man has consistent intimacy with his wife, several profound things happen psychologically and biologically. His bonding to her strengthens. His motivation to provide and protect multiplies. His confidence increases. His sense of being valued and desired by the woman he chose reinforces his masculine identity. The physical connection creates emotional connection in ways that work differently for men than women. For men, physical intimacy creates emotional intimacy. For women, it's often reversed. Understanding this difference is critical. A man who has both peace and intimacy becomes the best version of himself. He thrives professionally because his home supports rather than drains him. He's a better father because he has the emotional energy to engage with his children. He's more patient with extended family, more generous with friends, more effective in every role he occupies. His wife receives the benefits of him operating at his highest capacity, but deprive a man of peace and intimacy, subject him to constant criticism, sexual rejection, and a wife who refuses accountability for anything, you don't get a better man. You get a broken one, not because he's weak or flawed, but because you've systematically dismantled the foundation he needs to function at his highest level. Without peace at home, his stress compounds daily. He's fighting battles at work and then coming home to more conflict, more criticism, more problems to solve that his wife creates but won't acknowledge. He can't decompress. He can't recharge. He operates in a constant state of stress that erodes his health, his patience, his capacity to lead effectively. Without intimacy, he experiences rejection from the one person whose acceptance matters most. His wife's rejection communicates that he's not desirable, not valued, not worth her effort. This creates a wound that doesn't heal because it's reopened constantly. His confidence erodes. His motivation to provide decreases because what's the point of working hard for someone who won't even touch him? The emotional bond weakens because the physical connection that creates it for men has been severed. Over time, this man doesn't become a better husband. He becomes withdrawn, defensive, emotionally unavailable, and resentful. He stops trying because trying is punished. He stops caring because caring leads to pain. He stops engaging because engagement costs more than it returns. And his wife looks at this man she systematically created and complains that he's not the man she married, completely unable or unwilling to see her role in destroying him. Women bring most of the dysfunction into relationships. Not all of it, certainly. Men contribute. But if we're being statistically and observationally honest, women initiate most of the conflict, resist most of the accountability, and create most of the emotional chaos that destroys marriages. The constant fitness testing, seeing how far they can push before he pushes back. The emotional manipulation using tears or anger or withdrawal to control outcomes, the treating of intimacy as a reward for good behavior rather than a foundational part of partnership, the manufacturing of drama where none needs to exist, the victim mentality where everything that goes wrong is someone else's fault, the inability to apologize sincerely without adding "but you" to shift blame back. That's not men bringing these dynamics, that's women. And the reason this matters, the reason I focus on it relentlessly, is because families cannot thrive when women operate this way. Children suffer watching their mother disrespect their father. They learn dysfunctional relationship patterns. Boys learn that women can't be trusted and will punish you for being honest. Girls learn that accountability doesn't apply to them, and manipulation is how you control men. The cycle perpetuates. Men deteriorate under constant criticism and rejection. They become shadows of their potential. The family loses access to his full capacity because his wife is actively destroying it through her behavior. The home becomes a place of stress and conflict instead of refuge and support. Everyone suffers. And the woman sits in the center of all this destruction, convinced she's the victim, that her husband's withdrawal is unprovoked, that the problems would disappear if he would just change, completely blind to the fact that she's the common denominator in every problem she complains about. Here's what needs to happen for any of this to change. And I want to be clear, this won't happen in most cases because most women would rather preserve their ego than improve their marriage. But for the minority who actually care more about their family than about being right, here's the path forward. Women need to accept that their behavior has consequences, direct, observable, cause and effect consequences, that their refusal to be accountable creates the very problems they complain about, that their husband's distance is a response to their hostility, not unprovoked withdrawal, that his lack of leadership is a response to their constant undermining and second-guessing, not inherent weakness, that the dead bedroom is a result of years of rejection and criticism, not his shallow obsession with sex. Stop playing the label game where you deflect from your behavior by focusing on his tone or frustration. Stop making his reasonable response to your unreasonable behavior into the issue. Stop weaponizing his emotions against him when you created those emotions through your actions. Stop deflecting to men's issues when yours are being addressed. What about men is just another avoidance tactic. Yes, men have issues. We can address those separately. Right now, we're addressing your behavior and your refusal to be accountable for it. Stay focused on what's actually being discussed instead of deflecting. Stop treating your husband's frustration as proof he's the problem when you created that frustration through your actions. If you dismiss someone repeatedly, they get frustrated. That's not them being a jerk. That's them being human. If you consistently reject someone physically, they stop initiating. That's not them being distant. That's them protecting themselves from further rejection. Start recognizing that when he brings up an issue, he's not attacking you. He's trying to solve a problem so the relationship can improve. He's giving you valuable feedback about how your behavior is affecting him and the relationship. He's trusting you enough to be vulnerable about his needs and concerns. That trust is a gift. Stop treating it like an attack. Start understanding that your role isn't to be right all the time. Your role is to be a partner who can admit fault, accept feedback, and adjust behavior when it's damaging the relationship. Partnership requires two people committed to growth and two people willing to be accountable. You can't be a partner if you're immune from accountability. Start accepting that you're not perfect, that you make mistakes, that you have blind spots, that your behavior contributes significantly to relationship dysfunction. And that growth, real growth that improves your marriage, requires acknowledging that reality instead of deflecting it onto your husband every time. The marriages that actually work, the families that genuinely thrive, they have women who understand this. Women who can hear this behavior is a problem and respond with, "You're right. Let me think about this," instead of "How dare you criticize me?" Women who don't treat accountability as an existential threat to their identity. Women who value their husband's peace and their family's well-being more than they value protecting their ego and maintaining the illusion of perfection. Those women exist. I know because I counsel men married to them, and the difference is night and day. But they're rare, increasingly rare, because most women have been programmed to believe that admitting fault is weakness, that holding their ground regardless of reality is strength, that their feelings matter more than observable facts and consequences. That programming is destroying families at catastrophic scale, and someone needs to say it plainly, directly, without softening it to protect feelings. Not to attack women, but to wake them up to the destruction they're causing, because the men in their lives have already tried to tell them, gently, respectfully, repeatedly. And they were punished for it every single time. So they stopped trying, and now those marriages are dying slowly while the women wonder what went wrong, completely unable to see that they're standing in the center of the crater they created. What went wrong is simple. You refused accountability. You played manipulation games instead of being a partner. You treated your husband's needs as inconveniences and his frustrations as attacks on you. You prioritized your ego over your family's well-being. You demanded perfection from him while refusing any criticism of yourself. And now you're living with the consequences while still refusing to acknowledge your role in creating them. This isn't about hating women. This is about loving families enough to identify what's systematically destroying them. And what's destroying them, in the overwhelming majority of cases I see, is women who operate with complete immunity from accountability while expecting their husbands to absorb all criticism, all responsibility, all blame for everything that goes wrong. If you're a woman watching this and you recognize yourself in these patterns, you have two choices in this moment. You can get defensive, leave an angry comment about how I'm wrong or biased or attacking women, and continue the exact pattern that's destroying your marriage. That's the easy choice. That's the choice most will make. It protects your ego while sacrificing your family. Or you can accept that maybe, just maybe, this applies to you. That maybe your husband has been trying to tell you this for years, but you've been dismissing him the same way you want to dismiss this message. That maybe your marriage is suffering not because he's failing you, but because you're failing him and refusing to see it. And you can decide that your family is worth more than your pride, that your husband deserves a partner who can be accountable, that your children deserve to see a healthy relationship model instead of watching their mother systematically destroy their father. The choice is genuinely yours. But the pattern is clear, observable, and consistent across millions of marriages. And ignoring it, deflecting from it, getting offended by it, none of that makes it go away. It just makes your marriage another statistic in the divorce epidemic while you convince yourself it was all his fault, that you did everything right, that he just couldn't appreciate you. Meanwhile, the man you married, the one who once had hopes and dreams for your partnership, sits emotionally destroyed in the ruins of what could have been, knowing exactly what went wrong, but having learned years ago that saying it out loud only makes everything worse. If this perspective clarified something you've been sensing but couldn't articulate, if this validated an experience you've been living but everyone tells you is your fault, drop a comment. Let other men know they're not alone in this. Let other men know that the pattern they're experiencing isn't unique to their marriage, it's epidemic. And if you want more truth about relationship dynamics that nobody else will speak, that every therapist and marriage counselor tiptoes around, that society has decided is too controversial to acknowledge, subscribe to this channel. Because someone needs to say what millions of men are thinking but have learned they're not allowed to say publicly. Someone needs to validate the experience of men who are being destroyed by these patterns while being told they're the problem. And that's exactly what this channel exists to do. The truth isn't always comfortable. The truth often offends people who benefit from the lies. But the truth is still the truth. And families are being destroyed at scale because we've decided that protecting women's feelings is more important than protecting families. I'm choosing families, every single time. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it generates hate. Even when people call me every name they can think of for refusing to play along with the narrative that women are perpetual victims who bear no responsibility for relationship dysfunction. This needs to be said, and I'll keep saying it, because every day I counsel another man who's been systematically destroyed by these patterns. Another man who tried everything, who communicated clearly, who bent over backward to be understanding, who sacrificed his own needs repeatedly, and who's now sitting in my office emotionally shattered, wondering what he did wrong when the answer is he married a woman who refuses accountability, and he enabled that refusal for years, hoping she'd eventually change. She won't change, not without accountability. And she won't accept accountability unless the cost of refusing it becomes higher than the cost of accepting it. For most women, that cost is divorce, their husband finally leaving, their family falling apart, their comfortable life disappearing. Only then, when the consequences become undeniable, do some women finally look in the mirror. By then, it's usually too late. The damage is done, the man has emotionally disconnected completely, the children have absorbed years of dysfunctional relationship modeling. The marriage is over and everything but paperwork. And even then, even with her family destroyed, many women still can't accept accountability. They blame him for leaving. They tell everyone he gave up. They cast themselves as victims of his failure. Because accepting the truth that they destroyed their own family through years of refusing accountability is more painful than continuing to live in the delusion. So they choose the delusion, and another family joins the statistics, and the pattern continues into the next generation. That's what we're fighting against here. That's why this message matters. That's why the discomfort of hearing it is worth it, because maybe, just maybe, one woman watching this will actually get it, will actually look honestly at her behavior, will actually choose her family over her ego, and one family will be saved from becoming another statistic. That's worth every angry comment, every accusation of misogyny, every attempt to shut this message down, because families matter more than feelings, truth matters more than comfort, and someone needs to keep saying it until enough people hear it to make a difference. If you're still watching, if you made it this far, you're probably someone who actually cares about truth more than comfort. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, with a friend whose marriage is struggling, with a man who's been trying to figure out why his wife treats him the way she does, with anyone who's willing to look honestly at these patterns instead of dismissing them because they're uncomfortable. And subscribe, because this conversation isn't over. There's so much more to unpack about these dynamics, about how they develop, about what actually works to change them, about how men can protect themselves, about how families can heal if both people are willing to be honest. The truth is available for those brave enough to hear it. See you in the next one.